92.7 WMAY.
Springfield's news and talk.
So while you were sleeping last night, the Illinois House passed a House amendment to Senate Bill 2226. The Senate bill originally passed the Senate back in April of 2021, and it dealt with amusement rides. Well, now it's amended from the House to ban certain types of semi-automatic guns and magazines, not 10 or more rounds, but 12 or more rounds, and a host of other measures, including a task force or a strike force to go after trafficked guns. But why include that in a bill that would also ban the future sale of certain guns that are commonly held and possibly make people criminals for having magazines that are more than 12 rounds, which are pretty common? To talk more about this is Republican State Representative C.D. Davidsmeyer from just down the road in Jacksonville. Representative, thanks for taking time with us. You guys had a long morning. What's your reaction to all of this?
Well, Greg, I appreciate you having me on this morning. Yeah, it was a late night. There's a reason why the Democrats do this stuff in the middle of the night. They did the Safety Act in the middle of the night. The only reason they add things like a task force to go after illegal traffic guns is because that's what the problem is with all the gun violence in the city of Chicago, right? But they don't know what to do with that. So what they want to do is they want to take away guns from 99.999% of law-abiding citizens.
This bill, of course, is different from what was discussed with House Bill 5855. And some of the biggest changes are, of course, the magazine capacity from 10 to 12, and also the age from, saying that nobody under 21 could get a FOID card. They seem to take that out. But to the magazine issue, did you get any clarity as to why it went from 10 rounds to 12 rounds? And does that actually confuse things anymore? Because from my understanding, a lot of standard capacity pistols come with 14-round magazines.
Yeah, you can tell it's really interesting when anti-gun people write gun legislation, because you can tell their descriptions are wrong. In their descriptions, even the majority of your shotguns could be considered assault weapons, even though most of them have plugs and they can only fit 3 shells in them. It's ridiculous the way they go through. There's no rhyme or reason for going from 10 to 12. It's just Democrats pushing people around, big government. It's more of the same. They don't know any of the answers, so let's just throw everything in the air and see what sticks.
Representative, what can be happening next here? Of course, it's up in the Illinois Senate, but it narrowly passed the Illinois House with just 63 votes. I know you're not in the Senate, but what do you understand is the sentiment over there? Is this something that could ultimately get the threshold needed to pass?
It's really interesting. In recent years, when I first came in, the House was considered the reasonable branch of government. And over the last, I'd say, 4 years, the Senate has been a little bit more reasonable. The House has gone far left, unfortunately, and I think in the Senate there's still a few reasonable ones on the majority side that will look at this and say, whoa, let's pump the brakes. I know it's a political hot topic, but let's look at the actual effect of the legislation. Let's look at the policy and be more reasoned, be more thoughtful.
Now, we do anticipate that if this does pass and is enacted, as the governor suggested, he's more than willing to sign a ban on certain types of weapons. What about the sanctuary counties? What about those counties that have stood up and said that they won't enforce this? There's 70 different counties that have said such things?
Yeah, at this point, I applaud those counties. I mean, at some point, local officials have to stand up to tyranny. I mean, the reality is, the Second Amendment wasn't put in place to ensure that I can go duck hunting. The Second Amendment was put in place because they were afraid of government tyranny. I'm not saying that somebody with a shotgun is going to fight off the, American military, but it certainly keeps things into perspective.
Well, and I think if you look at some of the history as well of the crafting of the Second Amendment back in the late 18th century, it dealt with being a check against the possibility of standing armies. And again, it had nothing to do with duck hunting, trap shooting, or clay pigeon shooting, or even Olympic sports shooting. It had to deal with the security of a free state, one of those clauses in the Second Amendment.
Exactly. And as part of the Bill of Rights, our nation would never have been formed if that were not included.
State Representative C.D. Davidsmeyer with us here on Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY. So looking forward here, you got a new General Assembly that's going to be starting up in just a few days. How do you see this playing out? What are some of your concerns? What are some of your hopes?
I have certainly have concerns. Through COVID, I don't think that Republicans and Democrats were able to create any type of relationship. We were purposely kept apart through Zoom and things of that sort. I'm hoping that in the new General Assembly, even though there are more Democrats and they have gone further left, I'm hoping that, sitting side by side and looking each other in the eye, we can realize that we're all people. We don't have to play politics constantly. We can actually do thoughtful policy.
You've been one to support certain types of efforts to get more infrastructure spending and to make sure that we've got good transportation. What are some of your other major priorities you're hoping to secure for the Central Illinois District?
One of the biggest things that I think we need to look at, there's a lot of predictions about recession. I think we need to look at fiscal management. I mean, I've always been one to look at state spending and say, look, there are places where we can invest, right? Invest in the future of the state of Illinois, education, infrastructure, whatever it may be. We have to make sure that those dollars aren't just spent and wasted today, but that we see the value of them 10, 15 years down the road. So, my hope is that we can set aside some of the what they call extra dollars, but it's really extra inflation dollars that have come in because prices are so much higher. I'm hoping we can set some of that aside for when a recession really hits, whether it's a soft recession or whether it hits harder like back in the late 2000s.
Yeah, and that recession definitely was something that's still pretty fresh in a lot of people's minds. And looking at now, 12 years out, and how Illinois lagged behind the rest of the country in rebounding from the Great Recession of 2007, 8, and 9. What do you think needs to happen to ensure that if we do get into a recession, other than just managing the budget, what about the landscape for job creators, workers' comp costs, property taxes, those types of things?
Yeah, part of one of the bills that we passed last night included a kind of a big business incentive fund. Well, if we would make policies that encourage business growth, we would have more job opportunities and we wouldn't have to bribe companies to come to the state of Illinois. The reality is they should want to be here. We're the crossroads of America. We just need to get the heck out of their way, whether it's, looking at work comp, the litigious trial lawyers that we have in the state of Illinois, whatever it may be. There are policies that we can put in place that just get government out of the way. You continue to protect workers. You continue to ensure that nobody's taken advantage of, but you don't give huge advantages to one side.
State Representative C.D. Davidsmeyer with us here on WMAY. And lastly, just to kind of revisit the news of the day here with the passage of the House Amendment to Senate Bill 2226, what should your constituents take away from what happened in the past 24 hours?
My biggest concern, and I spoke about this in committee, my people aren't going to register their guns. They're not. In fact, they may say, well, if I'm going to be illegal by not registering a gun, why should I even fill out a FOID application? Why should I even follow through with that? My hope is that cooler heads will prevail. I don't think the state police is ready to take this on yet, and we only have 90 days. I mean, it's a pretty lofty goal, and I don't think you're going to see. I don't think you're definitely not going to see local law enforcement going door to door, and I pray that the governor doesn't send state police door to door because they don't want to do it.
Well, and Representative, you also asked, I think, probably one of the most poignant questions yesterday during committee about whether or not the list of registered firearms is going to be open to FOIA. Are you confident in Representative Morgan's response?
Well, I think it makes me a little bit. I mean, I've certainly learned to be distrustful of some government operations, but past rulings that have ruled that FOID is not FOIA-able and how this is connected to FOID makes me a little bit more comfortable. But still, I don't think the government should know a thing.
State Representative C.D. Davidsmeyer, greatly appreciate it. We'll definitely connect again soon. All right, be safe out there.
Definitely. Thanks, Greg.
It is Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY. Springfield's News and Talk. Got to take a break. Stay tuned. It's 7:52.
It's time to apply at Culver's West on Wabash. We're hiring